So welcome relatives. We're going to get started here. So allow me to introduce myself. Hamadakipi, chante washte nape chiu zapido, iyushki awichian kapi. Dakota mi charge kin Dallas Goldtooth or Wakamani demiedo, Washichia Dallas Goldtooth imaki apido, Indigenous Environmental Network, Ed Tawani, Nago Wana Chicago Edward T. My name is Dallas Goldtooth. I am the Keep It in the Ground campaign organizer with the Indigenous Environmental Network. My preferred pronouns are he, him, and I currently live on occupied Anishinaabe territory of so-called Chicago. And I'm so happy to be here with you and to be your MC, facilitator, moderator for this presentation. This is our partner mobilization call, and you all have been invited as beautiful allies and partners in this movement to build a better world and to see a rapid just transition away from fossil fuels. And so today we're going to present to you, break down this campaign called the Build Back Fossil Free campaign that is being anchored by not only numerous organizations, national organizations, but as well as guided and led by frontline community groups and organizations who are in the thick of it to not only protect their communities from the dangers of climate chaos and fossil fuel expansion, but to also protect the future generations of life on this planet. So we're going to be hearing from some of our frontline relatives later on in this conversation. And we'll be hearing about what their fight is, what the reason why they are fighting, and also in with a very intentional and focused effort, explain what President Biden can do once he takes office and what we expect from the Biden administration within the first 100 days. So this video will be recorded, just as a heads up. The way this is set up is like a meeting, so there we'll encourage you to mute your microphone. And at the end of after we present to you what the Build Back Fossil Free campaign is, we're going to open it up to some questions and answers, and I'll try to do my best to help answer some of your questions. Feel free to also use the chat function to have any conversations or questions there. We have some folks on standby in the background who are going to be tracking any questions that may come up in that space. So the camera is here for me, but then my screen's over here. So I'm going to be doing this awkward thing here, and there's some amazing powerhouse folks in here. So I'm just like lightweight, shy, and a little nervous right now. And so I just want to say thank you all for being here with us. And we really look forward to talking more about this Build Back Fossil Free campaign. So the Build Back Fossil Free, the acronym is BBFF, which is I kind of like it because it sounds like BFFs, is a campaign that was born out of an intentional effort to really coordinate the ongoing effort to coordinate the effort to push the Biden administration to stop fossil fuels. I mean, that's straightforward. I think we are a coordinated coalition who is focused on holding the line on what the next incoming administration needs to do in order to really address climate chaos that we're seeing across this planet. A core aspect of this fight is based on 3 pillars. The first pillar is protect and invest in Black, Indigenous, Brown, and working class communities that have borne the brunt of fossil fuel pollution and climate disaster. The second pillar is end the era of fossil fuel production, reject fossil fuel projects, and eliminate giveaways to oil, gas, and coal corporations. And the last pillar is launch a national climate mobilization to build back fossil free, delivering jobs, justice, and opportunity for all. Now, it may sound simple. These are 3 pillars, but within these, under these 3 pillars are a wide range of demands that we've developed. And you can check out these demands if you haven't already at buildbackfossilfree.org. A lot of the information that we're going to be delivering today is going to be at that website. So that's a key place, a key central place for what we're going to be talking about today. We know that Biden can do a lot of things on day one to put our frontline communities and our planet first, but we know in our gut that he won't do anything unless we get organized and push him in the right direction on behalf of our communities, our ecosystems in this planet. And we can't afford to play whack-a-mole. And I think that was really the intention. We realized, like, hey, we have folks who are doing a big push on to address fracking. We have all these folks who are fighting the leasing of their lands to fossil fuel companies. We have relatives who are fighting pipelines. We have folks who are trying to fight the export of fossil fuels and the expansion of petrochemical companies to develop plastics and to refine fossil fuels in the Gulf Coast and Ohio River Valley and other places. And all these efforts are right now are really focused on trying to say, what can we do to push Biden to help us? And so the idea behind this is let's coordinate together those efforts to really coalesce our voices to make sure that we are being heard. So that's why on January 19th, so in a couple of weeks, the day before Inauguration Day, we're going to ramp up pressure in the streets, in our communities, in our online to demand that the Biden administration build back fossil free. We highlighted a series of executive actions that Biden can easily take on his first days to serve as demands. And those demands are building on a couple of previous documents that a lot of organizations within the movement developed. One of those documents is the Climate President Action Plan, and the other document is the Frontline's Executive Action Platform. Both are very concise, lots of detail, a lot of energy and time went into those documents to basically lay the groundwork and let the administration need to know everything they need to know in order to take action. Now, we had originally planned to do an in-person, a part of this on January 19th, this coordinated day of action. We had originally planned to have an action in Washington, D.C. And due to what happened yesterday and the ongoing tensions in this country, as well as the serious risk of COVID-19, we decided that we are not going to move forward with a large-scale gathering in Washington, D.C. There may be regional actions that may happen, led and coordinated by folks in the D.C. area, but as a coalition, as a coordinated effort, we're not really intending to bring a lot of folks at this time for their safety and security, not only for them, but for our family and relatives in the DC area. So on that note, I do want to say this from the bottom of my heart, that we should not be surprised, even though how shocking it was to see the images that happened yesterday. What we saw was the mask come off. The systemic racism, the expression of white supremacy was clear as day, and for many of our communities, it was nothing new. For many of the communities that you'll hear today on this call, what we saw yesterday, we've been experiencing and seeing that for generations and generations. And in many of our fights and struggles against whether it's fracking, leasing, LNG, whatever it may be, whatever toxic pollution is being promoted in our neighborhoods and communities, it's the same face. We have to address white supremacy in this country and call it out for what it is. And so that is a clear and present danger, not only to our communities, but now hopefully people recognize it's a clear and present danger to this entire nation. And so we move forward very, very mindful of those dangers, but we are not afraid as a people, because we understand completely understand the power that we hold when we organize, when we communicate, when we build together. So I'm excited for this. I'm excited for what we can do with this campaign and all the other struggles that your organizations might be a part of and leading. So I want to say that's my my 2 cents. I don't want to take up too much more time. I want to hear from our amazing frontline organizers and leaders on this call. I only thing else I would say is that between now and January 19th, there are going to be there are ongoing struggles, ongoing fights. Many of your organizations might be a part of that. And we're going to try to uplift them and coordinate them and make sure that this narrative of build back fossil free, this narrative of keep it in the ground is interwoven in all of them. And that's really what we really want to see from you all, is to help us support us in this effort. So with that said, I'm going to pass over to our amazing lineup of speakers. And I want to start off with our sister down in so-called New Mexico. I'm going to pass over to our sister, Julia Bernal.
Hekam Dallas. Hino mankima hirimba tataikam kitupav tatoshoitoyai. Good evening, everyone, and all my relatives that I haven't seen in a while. My name is Julia Bernal, and I'm from Sandio Pueblo, and I'm also of Yuchi and Creek descent from the Oklahoma area, and I'm here in Tiwa Territory, so-called Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I'm here on behalf of the Greater Chaco Coalition and also as the Alliance Director of Pueblo Action Alliance. And I was invited here today to give testimony regarding the issues in the Four Corners area of the so-called US, which will always be stolen ancestral homelands to the Pueblo, Dene, Apache, Ute, and Hopi people. This area was declared by the Nixon administration as an energy sacrifice zone. Our ancestral homelands have suffered by the hands of extractive colonialism. This comes in forms of fracking, open uranium mines, and other mineral extractions. And they are a continued legacy of violence on the land and on the people. These neocolonial actions have further displaced Indigenous peoples of their lands, languages, and lifeways. And right now, there are 4.5 million acres of public lands and tribal lands in New Mexico that have been sacrificed by the Department of the Interior for fossil fuel extraction. And this is tens of thousands of New Mexicans live within a quarter mile of a frack well, with over 60,000 oil and gas wells throughout the entire state. But the legacy of the Department of Interior, which is formerly known as the Department of War, has been felt by the sovereign Indigenous nations for generations, because we are still here and we're not going anywhere. So this collective voice, when we say build back fossil free, we actually mean building back from generations of colonial harm in the forms of federal fossil fuel leasing and the disregard for Indigenous sovereignty and self-determination. So when we say halt federal fossil fuels, we mean it's time to end the fossil fuel economy and give our waters and land a chance at remediation and of regeneration. If we allow the continuation of this violent legacy, we are actually infringing on our own sovereignty and our own birthright as Indigenous people. We are no longer asking for meaningful tribal consultation. Now we are demanding free, prior, and informed consent, because Indigenous sovereign governments should have the say over how our ancestral lands are managed. And the resources of our Earth Mother should be treated as cultural resources, with a much needed paradigm shift to an Indigenous worldview rather than a Eurocentric capitalist market-based system that has overmined, overfracked, and misused land and water for far too long. So in my ancestral homelands, over 91% of the Greater Chaco landscape is currently leased for fracking. And just because we will soon have a president that accepts climate change and for what it is, it doesn't mean that our work ends there. So the last oil and gas lease of the Trump administration takes place on January 14th, where thousands of more acres are going to be up for sacrifice. So on this day, we will share a story with the Department of Interior directly, and we hope that you can help support our actions to protect our lands and our people. We are calling on the Biden administration to honor Indigenous sovereignty and to end energy sacrifice zone and ban all new federal leasing. So Herkem Shem, thank you for everyone listening and for those who will support our fight from this moment on. And I will pass it to my sister, Jody Potts.
Thank you, Julia. I don't know who's calling. I apologize greatly. I apologize. Shojre Jody Potts, OG. My name is Jody Potts. I am Hongwichin from Eagle Village, Alaska, and I am part of the Gwich'in Nation that has been fighting for over 30 years to protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge from oil extraction and oil development. Our people are the Caribou people, and we have been directed by our elders and some of our ancestors to protect the porcupine caribou herd, of which our people depend on for food security, for our way of life, for our culture, and for our spirituality. Our people have faced several presidential administrations that have tried to open up the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil development. However, we have been successful all these years in protecting that land, which is sacred to us. The porcupine caribou herd give birth to their calves in this area where oil is proposed for development. And so our people have always known this land and this place in the Arctic Refuge to be the sacred place where life begins. Just recently, in the last 4 years, the Trump administration, their main goal was to push forward the opening of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And it was just yesterday that the Bureau of Land Management under the Department of Interior and the Trump administration opened up lease sales in the Arctic Refuge. They opened up 22 parcels or tracts of land in the Arctic Refuge in the sacred place where life begins. Our people again have been working diligently to protect this sacred land and the caribou calving grounds. Yesterday, we were expecting big oil to show up at the lease sales. We had fully expected all of the parcels of land to be sold. However, I think much to Trump's dismay, however, he did have a lot of other things going on yesterday. The Alaska congressional delegation and Trump were probably pretty deflated when only 11 of the 22 tracts of land was actually bid on and sold yesterday. And so out of those 22 tracts of land, an State of Alaska Development Corporation called ADIA, it's the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority Corporation, bid on the majority, actually 9 of those tracts. And that corporation we've been targeting recently. And just last week at a public hearing with that Alaska State Corporation, it was 99% of opposition of them spending money on these lease sales in the Arctic Refuge. However, they move forward despite public outcry. There are 2 other small companies that showed up and bid. There were a few companies that didn't win any lease sales. So it wasn't as successful as they wanted. But at this point, we do know who those companies are and who we need to be targeting at this point. We also, as Gwich'in tribes, we are calling on President-elect Biden on day 1 to build back fossil fuel free and to reverse the tax act. How this got opened anyway was because they slipped the piece of opening the Arctic Refuge in the tax act. And so we are asking the Biden administration to reverse that part of the tax act and also to begin the process of passing a bill to permanently protect the Arctic Refuge and designate it wilderness for permanent protection of the sacred area. We're also asking Biden on day one to ban federal fossil fuel leasing and also to respect tribal sovereignty in more than just tribal consultation, but also understanding here in Alaska, there are tribes and corporations. Corporations are not tribal governments, even if they are native corporations. We are calling on Biden to actually obtain free, prior, and informed consent before moving on any traditional sacred lands of Indigenous people. And we're asking all of you to please join us, stand with us as we ask the Biden administration to do what's right in this situation. So, masicho.
Halmidak yapi, chante washe unape tu use happy, Tashina sapanwe amachi yapi, sorry, wakpawaste lakota yate lamanta haeksto. Hi, you all. My name is Tashina. I am calling from the Cheyenne River Lakota Nation in Soquel, South Dakota. We have boots on the ground monitoring the KXL pipeline and what in the construction behind it. Right now, currently, we have a prayer camp that is in place and people that have been just monitoring and holding a peaceful gathering. And what this pipeline has posed against our people is the livelihood. Our livelihoods are at stake regarding our fishing and our hunting in our water. It's projected to snake under the Cheyenne River, for which my tribe is named. Yesterday, we went to a court hearing about an hour and a half south of us from in support of our water protector, Jacelyn Charger, who locked down onto pump station equipment because they are near complete with the pump station. And while we were there, another one of our relatives who came to stand in solidarity was arrested as well for charges that were committed on Oceti-Sakowin Treaty territory in which the state had no jurisdiction to arrest these individuals. So what it comes down to with KXL and my community, we have been a resilient nation since time immemorial. We house the band of Crazy Horse. We have always protected our people. We have always protected our wildlife, those that cannot speak for themselves, the trees, the air, and all of creation. We are urging and we must pressure Biden into that on his first day of office, he must extinguish the Keystone XL pipeline. We have an action that will be being conducted on January 18th on the beautiful Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We felt like it was a perfect day to honor resistance and also show resistance. It is youth-led. It will be a concert with Indigenous artists, and there will be an action later on within the day to kind of get a little bit of attention on what these youth have to say, Indigenous youth. I want to make one more note about the Cheyenne River. Cheyenne River goes directly into the Missouri River, and Missouri River provides clean drinking water for millions of people downstream. And it would only take about an hour from where it poses to go through to reach the Missouri River if it were to break under that river. So I'd like to say that Biden must reject climate polluting projects, reject all federal permits for fossil fuel and other climate damaging infrastructure, especially those that are right by Indigenous communities or on Indigenous communities. And that we need to make sure that he understands that Indigenous people's voices regarding the land and the water must come first. And they also must be the last ones to go to when regarding these decisions. I want to thank you all for your time today, allowing me to be in this space, kind of give you an overview of what we're dealing with here. I do believe in people power, and when it comes to building back fossil free, I believe that we can accomplish this goal as long as we do it together and sticking to the resistance. Thank you.
We're going to go over to Sasha. Sasha, you're on mute. Okay, let's go over to Melissa and then we can come back to Sasha. So Melissa?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Kwali Yohwali, everyone. My name is Melissa and I am from Corpus Christi, Texas. I am a member of the Indigenous people of the Coastal Bend, which includes partners from the Karankawa, the Lipan Apache, and the Mexica tribes. Our homelands continue to be destroyed due to oil and gas exploitation projects through foreign investors, and we are banding together to speak out against these abusive industries and pray for our Mother Earth. Community adjacent to a 15-mile stretch of concentrated refineries and already have a high prevalence of cancer rates, asthma, birth defects, and are living with continuous anxiety after experiencing several water contamination issues, pipeline explosions, and natural gas leaks. We are dealing with a massive increase of oil export facilities across Texas and the Gulf Coast right now that are destroying our sacred sites along the way. We now have one of the largest ports in the country in terms of total tonnage of crude oil exports, reaching as high as 1.6 million barrels per day and climbing. But at the same time, our community is suffering and is currently fighting for the right to have clean air to breathe and clean water to drink, clean soil to grow our food. All of our sacred elements are being threatened by existing and proposed fossil fuel export facilities, desalination plants, dredging activities, pipelines, and plastic pellet producing plants. All of these export products I mentioned will result in polluting not only our local area, but other countries across the world and the climate at large. Since this oil, liquid natural gas, and plastic, these products are being exported out of Corpus Christi and will reach other countries and continue to pollute wherever they end up. Some solutions to end all of this is one, to continue to embrace and learn from our native people whose ancestors have lived in balance with nature for centuries, pre-colonization, reestablish the US oil export ban that was lifted in 2015, and 3, help us preserve our sacred areas from oil and gas exploitation. On January 10th, the Indigenous people of the Coastal Bend will be hosting a virtual prayer action, and that will be on our Facebook page titled The Indigenous People of the Coastal Bend. In response to one of the largest oil export facilities in our area, Moda Midstream's expansion plans. Moda plans to expand their current oil export operations onto known Karankawa campsites. The expansion of this particular facility will not only be devastating for local air and water quality, but also for the seagrass beds and wetlands that provide much needed ecosystem services to us and our local wildlife like the redfish, the blue crab, the pelicans, the sea turtles, the dolphins, and the countless migrating bird species that make their way through our area every year. It has been told that the Karankawa people have been wiped out of this area, but they are still here. Thousands of Karankawa artifacts have been found on the McGloin Bluff site, which is the area that Moda is currently threatening to destroy. Through our prayers, media exposure, and legal battles, we will defeat MODA and begin saving our coastline one wetland at a time. We demand that the Biden administration begin phasing out existing and proposed oil and gas operation facilities and provide resources for a just transition for all of the workers affected. We need Biden to build back fossil free and lead a transformative climate justice agenda starting on day one in office. We can no longer sit idle on this important issue of climate change that affects us all. Climate change is real and we are living through it every day. Dr. Kamate Ometeo, I will now hand it off to Sasha if she's ready.
She's getting ready there.
Hello. Hi.
Got you. You're good to go.
Hi. My name is Sasha Bolio. I'm from the Red Lake Nation. We are currently fighting line 3 here. I would say my biggest issue right now with this whole thing going on is that we are in the middle of a pandemic and we've had 4,200 out-of-state workers come into our communities in the last 2 weeks, and Minnesota was currently ranked number 2 in the nation for the highest new virus cases. Those two numbers go hand in hand. The biggest booms of the Corona cases happen to be right in the pipeline routes, and my community is a high-risk community. I see a lot of elders that are working here. I'm at the Seven Clans Casino right now, and unfortunately, we have a lot of pipeline workers staying here because it's so close to the pipeline, and a lot of them are going unmasked. They're just totally disregarding the safety of the people here, including other Minnesota citizens. So it's really hard seeing that they're putting us all in risk here for a pipeline right now. I think they should really take into consideration that a lot of us are high-risk communities on this route, and that they need to stop construction until this pandemic is under control, because I just feel like that that's the number one issue that we're having right now. We're also doing a treaty camp out on the St. Hilaire site. We are currently practicing our rights for fishing, hunting, gathering on the river there. We have our full river rights. They're trying to currently go under the Red Lake River. And we are currently slowing that progress right now, which is good. We don't know when it's going to happen. So we're out there 24/7 right now, keeping guard, and we're just hoping that Biden sees our valiant efforts here. I'm taking my kids out into these high-risk communities here to get our voices heard, and we shouldn't have to step out of our comfort zones and come out of our houses to come and stop this as women, as mothers, as high-risk community members. I just feel like this is really unfair that they're bringing this into our communities at such a time. And I'm just hoping that Biden will be fossil free from day one. I really urge that we go fossil free from day one. We don't have much time here with our clean water. I'm just hoping that things change very soon, because we don't have a lot of time left with our water and our rights. So please come stand with us if you can. We have a website, Red Lake Treaty Camp on Facebook. Check us out. We're doing all kinds of stuff for our Native community right now, but I'm really urging Biden to halt Line 3 construction immediately due to the health risks that it imposes upon our communities. I'll hand it over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Hi, y'all. My name's Becca Hinojosa. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I live in Brownsville, Texas, which is part of the Rio Grande Valley on the ancestral land of the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe of Texas, the Eshtukna. And I'm speaking, I'm with an organization called Another Gulf is Possible Collaborative. And our community, Brownsville, the Rio Grande Valley, is on the front lines of sea level rise, US border militarization, and fossil fuel build out and expansion, we're simultaneously facing and fighting off 3 fracked gas LNG export terminals, a proposed oil terminal, cross-border pipelines, border militarization, the active construction of the border wall here. Families have been separated for a very long time, concentration camps, mass deportations, and also a highly explosive SpaceX facility that's owned by Elon Musk. And there's a connection between all of these issues. And I think it's important that, we realize the intersections of all of these different issues in our communities. We're facing the combined negative impacts from all of these facilities, toxic air emissions, spills, pipelines explosions, space rocket explosions next to these potential fossil fuel explosions. Every year, more erratic and dangerous hurricanes. I mentioned again, sea level rise, and then the destruction to our ecosystems from border militarization. And 5 years ago, I remember, in 2015, which is more than 5 years ago now, I remember protesting the crude oil export ban, which was HR 156 in downtown Houston with Port Arthur activist Hilton Kelly and with Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services. And we were painting banners and holding them downtown to stop the lifting of the crude oil export ban while it was flash flood raining. And so here we are, fast forward, and we're still speaking out. And it's just to show that these movements need to continue to grow, like what we have today. And yeah, we already have an action planned for the 19th down here because there's also a day of action against the border wall because construction is going to continue well into the Biden administration. So we're going to do a combined action, all of the requests that our community has to stop all of these different destructive colonization forces. So we're gonna have a drag show and like outside the border wall, and we'll also talk about lifting, reinstating the export ban and demanding rights for Indigenous people, because all of these destructive facilities are destroying sacred lands of the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe where sacred sites are located. So with that, I'm going to pass it to the next speaker. Thank you so much.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharon Levine, and I'm from St. James, Louisiana. I am the founder and director of a faith-based organization called Rise St. James. Our governor, John Bell Edward, approved the $9.4 billion petrochemical plant called Formosa Plastics to come into our already overburdened community. We are suffering from chemical exposure, and many in our community are sick and dying. St. James is in the middle of what we call Death Alley between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, Louisiana, where more than 100 petrochemical plants and refineries are polluting the air, water, and land with cancer rates up to 700 times the national average. My community is full and we can't take any more. The chemicals that Formosa will release is a death sentence for St. James Parish. We have 12 industries alone in the 5th district where I live. Our community wants to live with clean air to breathe and clean water to drink. Formosa chose our community because we are poor and Black. The state are using St. James as a sacrifice zone. All they care about is wealth, and we are left with the consequences. Formosa Plastics wants to make all of that worse just to create mountains of new plastics we don't want or need. We are asking President-elect Joe Biden to stop this insane petrochemical bailout, protect vulnerable frontline communities, and slow the flow of plastic pollution, prevent pollution hotspots, end fossil fuel exports, and reject climate polluting projects. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker, who is Brian. Thank you.
Thank you. Buenas noches, compañeros, compañeras. My name is Brian Parras. I live in Houston, Texas. I'm co-founder of Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services. I'm also a member of Another Gulf is Possible, and I'm an organizer with Sierra Club's Healthy Communities. I want to start by acknowledging the incredible breach that we all witnessed last night as thousands seamlessly made their way into the highest halls of the United States government. And as we heard from commentators, political pundits, and news anchors, wonder how this could happen. Black, Indigenous, and communities of color could not help but notice and comment on the glaring disparity and how this violent insurrection was treated by law enforcement when compared to the massive uprisings over the last number of years, from Ferguson to Standing Rock, to George Floyd, and ongoing resistant camps all over the country. Our communities have been met with police brutality, criminalization, militarization, violence, and terrorism. The same ideology of white supremacy, colonialism, and capitalism that has brought this violence upon us also drives the disproportionate impacts of fossil fuel extraction, climate change, and more recently, COVID-19 on our communities. We are on the front lines. We are on the fence line. We are on the coastline, and we are on the frontera of institutional erasure. We suffer health disparities from birth to death. Our lands are stolen, destroyed, and polluted. And even our ancestors are met with destruction and annihilation in their resting places. While this is common in all of our Black, Indigenous, and communities of color, I have witnessed these assaults with vicious regularity in the Gulf Coast. The Biden administration should be well aware of these. It was under the Obama administration that the BP drilling disaster took place, where unprecedented amounts of Corexit toxic chemicals were sprayed on the water. The southern leg of the Keystone XL was fast-tracked, bringing more crude oil to my sister and auntie, Casey Camp in Oklahoma, and led to pipelines and more destruction to Houston and Port Arthur. Fracking boomed and was promoted as a bridge fuel. Offshore drilling was expanded, and the export ban was lifted. All of these have had disastrous impacts on the Gulf Coast. The Gulf Coast has served as a sacrifice zone for the nation, at times with duplicity from our own allies, colleagues, and friends. If Biden wants to build back better, then Biden needs to start by removing, repairing, and replacing what he built under the Obama administration. True healing comes from recognition of the harm one has caused and repairing that damage. Only then can you build back better. But we want to build back fossil-free also. And that is also important. And equally important is that we want to build what many of our communities have never had to begin with: equality, justice, and a fighting chance at living to our fullest potential. Thank you.
Woo! You got me. I'm shaking right now, Brother Brian. Thank you. Let's get some appreciation and love to all of our relatives who just spoke up and spoke to power. So, just send some good energy. Let's show some recognition on your video if you can to all of our amazing frontline leaders, organizers, community folks who are in the trenches at this very moment to protect their communities, their people, their families, but also to protect all of us in the next 7 generations of life. this is what it's about. We are, this campaign, the Build Back Fossil Free campaign, I just want to make this clear. It's not just about, of course, because we have fossil fuels in the title, it's focused on fossil fuels, but it's also a matter of addressing the wide range of climate chaos that we're seeing, everything from the wildfires to the droughts to food insecurities to the escalation of the military industrial complex. Like, we recognize as communities on the front line that these things are all tied together, and we're doing a coordinated effort to really hold the line. And I just want to make this clear, that this campaign is not just about a one-day event. So we're not just talking about, oh, we're going to do the 19th and we're going to hold up some signs and do all these other things, which are going to be powerful. And we look forward to doing that. But it's looking at escalated measures to hold this administration accountable within its first 100 days. That's the focus. Is right out the gate, we want to come strong, we want to come unified, and we want to stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters and relatives who are on the line all across Turtle Island to protect themselves. And this campaign is meant to hold the left flank. We're not about incremental steps here to cutting ties or support of fossil fuels. It's about following science and traditional ecological knowledge to keep fossil fuels in the ground now. And one major thing is that we want to hold the Biden administration accountable to not take half measures or to rely or actually build up more false solutions. We have no more time. And so I just wanted to share that. I'm going to pass it over to my sister, Ashley, who is going to break down what the National Day of Action looks like in a couple of weeks on January 19th and what you all can do. So this is really, purpose of this is to let you all know and your organizations what you can do to support this campaign, to sign on, to jump on board, to help us out, and to do this together. So I'm passing over to my sister, Ashley.
Yes, Niawe Dallas and Niawe to all of our frontline amazing speakers. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your evening. I know that y'all are right now in the thick of it, fighting for your lives and fighting for our futures. And I want to say thank you again to everybody who stayed on this call. This is a very important time for us to all come together. I also want to encourage you to check out the chat. My colleague and my sister Jen is going to be posting the links to various links that we're talking about, including our social media toolkit. And again, on January 19th, we're asking you all to join us on calling on the Biden administration to fulfill their promises via bold executive action in their first 100 days. We really wanted to be in DC, but because of the uptick in COVID and settler terrorism, it's made it pretty difficult for that to be accomplished. But instead, we're asking folks to join us in 4 different ways. And so the first way that you can join us is right in your backyard. The front lines are everywhere, and we're asking you to participate in mass distributed actions at a meaningful site in your location. I'm here in Oklahoma, so-called Oklahoma, which is pipeline crossroads of the world. And I can think of many different places that I can position myself in front of and to take pictures to send to y'all to make sure that these actions are amplified and people know that everybody across Turtle Island is tired of this fossil fuel dependency. Second, you can join us on Twitter. The morning of the 19th, we are engaging in a Twitter storm. We're hoping to make Build Back Fossil Free trend on Twitter, and we're going to be tweeting at the Biden transition team to demand that the Biden administration build back fossil free. The third way you can participate is through a petition that we're asking you to share before the 19th. That is available on our website, which is buildbackfossilfree.org. And finally, we're going to be engaging in a digital rally. So just this tonight was just a preview of the many amazing speakers from the front lines all across so-called United States that we have lined up to participate in that day. So stay tuned. And finally, also, please stay tuned to the social media toolkit that we dropped in the chat because there will be up-to-date frontline actions that are popping off all across the so-called US. This is just the beginning. We have 100 days to really set our priorities straight and let the Biden administration know that we are here to demand that he make good on the promises that he made to our communities. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Dallas for more questions and answers. And Jen is following the chat. So thank you all again.
So that was, I know a lot of information, and in the chat, Jennifer is posting stuff in there. So we have the toolkit, which has everything that Ashley laid out. So thank you so much, Ashley, for delivering that, all that content for us. I want to open it up. I'm taking a chance here because there's a lot of folks here, but we want to open it up for some questions and answers. And if you all may have questions, here's a chance. I won't put this out there now. We're not looking for statements. I'm gonna cut that off right away. We're not looking for statements. We're questions. Like, I know there's someone in there that might feel like, oh, I want to say something right now. Nope, this is questions, and we're here to provide as best as we can some answers. So if you have any clarifying questions, here's a good chance. You can ask in the chat, or you can ask, just unmute yourself and ask, and we'll do I'll do my best to answer that. And if I don't know the clear answer, we'll get back to you. So is there a question? So I see a question in the chat. Is there a website where we can find all the current movement actions? So for this campaign, we have buildbackfossilfree.org. If you are executive director, or if you actually are a representative of your organization and you haven't signed on to this campaign, here's your chance. You can definitely go to the site and sign on and sign up your organization in support of this. But on that site, we plan to update some of the actions that were brought up on this call. But I want to be very clear that we don't intend to, we don't presume to represent all actions. There's so much fights happening right now. And so we're just going to try our very best to support the community groups who have been involved so far, but there are a number of other fights out there that we don't want to say like, hell, those don't matter. Like, we really are trying to build as much of a support base as we can. The type of actions, I see Ted Glick, you're hi Ted. Your question about what type of actions are you suggesting for January 19th? So on the site, as Ashley had mentioned, in the toolkit, as well as it's going to be on the site, will be downloadable graphics. And we're asking for folks, as you determine whatever COVID safe protocols that you may have, to take photos in front of iconic locations in your communities, your neighborhoods, and to upload those on January 19th. And we're also going to have, it will be in the toolkit and also on the website, a place where you can upload those photos that we as organizers can use later on for other future actions, like, potential like projection actions or whatever may come up. So we're asking folks at the very least to take do a photo of the banner and of the graphics that we create at iconic locations around your communities. Truth be told, it's kind of tough. We talked about this for a bit because it's the Biden administration. You're like, oh, what are the targets? Where are the points of decision making? Oh, it's a federal building. Most federal buildings are pretty lame looking or really boring looking, and you could do that. But we also felt it might be good to see representations of all these different locations in solidarity with this movement and our relatives. And I think if you also are like lean to certain fights, by all means, loop in the messaging of those local fights. So I know our relatives in New Mexico, they're going to have Build Back Fossil Free, but there will also be messaging particular to the lease sales and the fight to protect the Chaco Canyon region and those sacred sites from further development. So by all means, loop in those local struggles that you are developing and supporting. If I sign the petition today, are you holding them until the 19th? That's a great question. Actually, the plan and the intention right now is to hold on to those petitions for delivery. I mentioned before, 19th is just the start, but we are looking to do escalated actions after inauguration day onward. And so the petitions, we're going to be collecting them all the way through inauguration day and possibly beyond. And we're going to be thinking creatively, how can we come up with an action to deliver these petitions to the Biden administration. So there's a good question, RL. I see your question about what is this beyond a social media push? Do you have plans for legislation? What I can say this is we're very mindful of the dynamic of an executive action and legislative action. And a lot of us obviously were waiting to hear what happened out of the Georgia election. And I can say that there is a crew of folks within this same coalition who are looking at developing legislative action strategies to hold on the same grounds, holding that left flank of not backing down and really following what is needed in order to address climate chaos. So this right here, though, what we're talking about specifically, we were very strategic. We want to make this really focus on executive action, but we're not forgetting that there are folks doing a legislative action component to this. Will a ban on fossil fuel exports be part of the demands? If you look on the site, it lays out pretty clearly our demands, and it's actually pretty damn substantial. Like there's a lot in there, but it does address the fossil fuel exports. Have specific individuals in the Biden transition team who you're planning to send demands to, such as John Kerry? That's an incomplete question. I don't know if that's a question, but I, again, can't speak on behalf of everybody. This is a coalition effort. So like the way we organize this is, all right, I guess some of y'all may know, like there's a whole coalition of folks who are fighting to protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And there's a whole coalition of folks who have been fighting for years to protect public lands from lease sales and from fossil fuel expansion on public lands. There's a whole group of folks who are fighting tar sands. These are coalitions unto themselves. We're not trying to take over their organizing. We're just trying to coordinate amongst those spaces to push forward. And so I know that those other spaces, those other coalitions, I'm doing a lot of hand motions here. They have been doing their due diligence to reach out to the transition teams to deliver their messages. I see, there's a lot of questions. Y'all I should have thought this through because y'all are very intelligent peoples. So we have, I see, Janet, your question about Deb Haaland. Deb Haaland is, a lot of us have pushed strongly for her to be nominated to be the Secretary of Department of Interior. We're very excited. A lot of us are very excited to see her be nominated, and so we'll strongly support her during the hearing process. But we're also mindful that she's a public official in a position of power that has a lot of control over a lot of our fights, and so it just makes sense for us to keep that in mind, but also to work with what we have and we do have open doors, as she has expressed in the past. And so fully, we're totally strategic and say, would like to try to utilize that as best as possible. Not trying to speak on behalf of everybody. That's just my thoughts on it. Will it only be January 19th or will it be that entire week? So we're focusing on January 19th. That's going to be, for now, our big day of action. But like our frontline relatives all expressed, they are doing their own individual actions between now and the 19th and even beyond. And so it's like, we're doing the best we can in this coordinated space to focus on the 19th as like a big announcement and to get trending. But we are definitely going to be doing other actions before and looking to do stuff after. Can someone help me? There's so many questions there. I might need Ben or I need my chat
I'm working
buddy.
on it. Some of these have been answered in the chat as well.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, does anyone want to chime in if we're bump yours up? There's so many great questions. I'm digging through too.
I'll answer. I see, Tamara, your question about the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty in the list of demands. As it stands right now, I think it's not in the documents that we've put together on the site, but that doesn't exclude it from potentially being brought up or being brought into conversation. So definitely would love to talk with y'all at 350 to see how we can help support that. I know that other folks are working on the non-proliferation treaty as a task. And so there might be ways that we can also bring that into this mix. Anything, I'm trying to figure any other questions that you see, Ben or Jenny or Jennifer, my chat buddy.
I'm sorting through, but I kind of see more comments. Moratorium on all permitting until all environmental laws have been repaired from rollbacks. If y'all have any more questions, you can raise your hand or you can post them in the chat and I can bump them up.
I don't know if you answered it, Dallas, but someone asked what happens after January 19th.
So I can say this is all right. I'm gonna speak as Dallas Goldtooth as a campaigner with IEN, but this is also based on a lot of in-depth conversation with our relatives and comrades in this coalition effort. There is an expectation. I can say I expect something positive out of the Biden administration. I think we all assume that there might be something that a decision, executive order might came out that's somewhat positive. But I think we all agree it's not going to be to the degree that we want or like. And something that's very personal to me as a previous organizer on KXL, my fear, and I'm going to say this just straight to you, all the folks listening, I have a sincere fear that we could see a positive decision on Dakota Access Pipeline or Keystone XL, but nothing on Line 3. We could see a positive decision on, some matter of lease sales, but we're not going to see anything about the fossil fuel exports. And so what we really intend to be here in this space, what we want to create is this environment where we support and uplift each other and have a culture of yes and kind of approach. Like, yes, you did something minuscule in the great scope of things. Now what are you going to do? That's kind of the intention behind this. And so come January 20th, Inauguration Day, and the following weeks after, we still want to continue to keep the pressure up because we fully expect not all of our demands are going to be met, or they will not be met to the degree that we need them to be. I hope that answered your question, Brian. That was somebody else's question.
Yeah, that was Jess Wallach. I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yes. Thanks, Jess, for that question.
There is another question here. What about maximizing energy efficiency in every aspect of our lives and activities? The more successful we can be radically reducing our fossil fuel usage, the closer we can get to starving out fossil fuel industry.
I like that. Who was that? Peter? That was sneaky because you started with the question and then you did a statement after it. So I saw the slyness there. I see you. Look, we have our focus in this campaign. We're gonna keep that focus on these demands, but we don't lose sight of all the other things that need to happen in order for us to steer us in the right direction to avoid further climate chaos, which includes, demand side organizing and a lot of the demand side work that needs to happen. So that's very, very much, thank you for those comments and thoughts. And it's, I think, very much a part of our minds when we do this work. If there's not any other questions, I just want to take this moment to just again ground us. Brother Brian, you laid it out pretty clear. What happened yesterday it was very tough for different reasons. I guess what got me through yesterday and today is, to be absolutely frank with everybody, is all the ridiculous, funny memes that are out there in social media, because I choose to use humor as a way to deal and process, but I can't help but ignore the reality, the lived experience of me, just a 6'2" Native man in some situations where I just step off a curb and I get attacked by a cop, or I get maced and pepper sprayed for protecting my people's right to clean water. And to see what happened yesterday as like just an absurd hypocrisy. So whatever you do to process this moment, do it, like, to help you heal, because we need you. We need our organizations. We need our groups to continue to push forward, but we need to do it together. So I just would love, I just want to say again, thank you to all our folks. It's the folks that you heard from are not the only organizations, they're not the only frontline groups who are part of this effort. We're continuing to outreach. We're going to continue to connect the dots. If you work with a frontline organization or group or peoples who you think, oh, this would be awesome for them to be a part of, let help us loop them in so that we can get graphics to them, we can get designs so that we can start connecting the dots here through this push. If you have any questions for follow-up, feel free to contact myself. My chat buddy can put my email in the chat there. You can also follow up with Ben Golliff. Ben is my comrade behind the scenes with Center for Biological Diversity, but we're not the only organizations on board with this. It's a whole wide range, but we can help point you in the right direction. If you have comms people that would love to plug into the comms work, we can plug you in that way. If you want to be down with some of the tactical and actions ideas, like, hit us up. We'll help point you in the right direction. If there's strategy ideas that you may have, hit us up. We'll try to point you in the right direction of the groups that are doing that. So that, I think, is it. I need some water. You all need to go to bed at some point. Hope you got some food. I think that's it. I'm gonna close out. We good? Our team, Ben, Jenny, everybody? All right.
Yeah, thanks so much. We're so excited to build with all of you. This is really the beginning. And so, yeah, just flagging, don't hesitate to reach out to Dallas, me, Jennifer, others, and we will be developing the systems in real time to bring this to scale. So,
yep. We're doing our best in these tough times, but we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
Buenas noches.